This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. People near Lac du Bonnet are getting their first look at the devastation left behind from a wall of wildfire. After more than a week, evacuees are now allowed back in, but for some, there's nothing left to see. The fire destroyed 28 properties in that area, many along a stretch of Wendigo Road, which is almost unrecognizable. CBC's Josh Crabb is there in Lac du Bonnet now. And Josh, what is it like there today?
There's still a strong smell of smoke, Brittany. In fact, it got worse throughout the day, and a haze hanging over the area. You can see it in the air. People had a chance on Wednesday afternoon to return to their burned out homes for the first time before the area reopened to the public. We went in with a property owner. It was his third trip in, and it hasn't gotten any easier to see the damage left behind.
Every time I walk back in, it's just like you've never seen it before. Now it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's a place that once held promises of a relaxing retirement. Now, the home Brad Wood built with his own hands has been reduced to rubble.
You look out at the lake, it's beautiful. The water's untouched, but you look to the forest behind me, it's just a barren black wasteland.
His was one of 18 homes and cottages destroyed in a wildfire last week on this stretch of Wendigo Road.
So the whole upper area was all living quarters.
The fire, which was caused by human activity, is being held now. The flames left behind a trail of charred destruction, scorching the rocky landscape, a once lush forest, and ripping through waterfront properties. It claimed the lives of two people, Sue and Richard Noel, who became trapped in the inferno.
It's a very roller coaster ride of emotions for everybody here. We're all feeling sorrow for the family that passed. Everybody's feeling some form of memories lost.
All along this road, what were once people's happy places are now gone, reduced to their foundation and destroyed. Lakefront lots now left with piles of rubble, places built on rock outcrops, nothing but charred debris. Yet not far from here, homes were spared in nearby Grosdon Point. Paula Johnson was only allowed to return to her place there Wednesday night after being displaced for more than a week. Seeing the devastation her neighbors suffered is hard.
Sad. It's really sad because a lot of people on the strip that we're sitting on, we knew them, and so of course they've all lost their places. You almost have survivor's guilt because, you know, your place made it and theirs didn't.
It wasn't only homes lost, garages, sheds, boats, and vehicles were destroyed.
And if you look at it, it looks like a roof, but it's just dust.
People who've lost their homes are only beginning to make their insurance claims. Cleaning up the mess left behind will be a huge and costly task. Wood, who's worked as a firefighter for 30 years, has never seen anything like it.
I'm still taken aback every time I see this absolute destruction.
He's unsure if he'll rebuild.
It does take a long time for the forest to come back. So for a lot of us that were dreaming of retiring here in the future, those aspirations may not come to fruition just strictly because the forest will never come back in that time.
More people in the RM of Lac du Bonnet, evacuees, were allowed to return home earlier this afternoon. Some people say they plan to get together over the weekend just to be with each other during this difficult ordeal. Brittany.
All right, thank you, Josh. That's CBC's Josh Crabb in Lac du Bonnet. New parents in Manitoba are growing more concerned as community transmission of measles continues and cases rise. Yesterday, the province announced more than a dozen new cases of the highly contagious infection and for the first time called what's happening in Manitoba an outbreak. The CBC's Rosanna Hempel has more.
Samantha Joyce is buying groceries without her 3-month-old baby. She's worried about exposing her daughter to measles.
I don't want her to get sick. I'm really scared about that.
On Wednesday, the province announced 16 new cases of measles since last week. So far, it's reported 64 confirmed and probable cases. Canada's immunization guide recommends children get their first dose of a measles vaccine after their first birthday. At 3 months, Joyce's baby isn't old enough to be immunized.
I really want to get it done as soon as possible. And it does make me a little weary of bringing her out and being around other people. Especially, I know it sounds bad, but if I do hear them cough, I just want to stay away a little bit and wash my hands, sanitize.
Last week, the province expanded eligibility to 6 to 12-month-old children in the Interlake Eastern and Southern Health regions because that's where most cases have been located. Chelsea Winston's 9-month-old daughter can't get vaccinated yet because she lives under a different health authority in Winnipeg. Winston hopes changes to eligibility in her region come soon.
It's scary because already now just in May, we've had such an increase. So what is next month going to look like? So over the summer, it's definitely more scary. I feel like we might be a little bit more isolated to just certain different playgroups.
Dr. Santina Lee is a provincial medical officer of health. She says babies under about 12 months may have acquired some immunity from their mothers if they were previously infected with measles or vaccinated against it. But as for expanding vaccine eligibility,
we're watching the situation really carefully. Right now, we aren't planning to expand that across the province, but that might be the situation later down the road. So it really depends on where cases are and what spread is looking like.
Lee says most cases involve children who are unvaccinated, but she cited privacy concerns when asked how many have led to hospitalization. She says most cases, though, have not demanded a high level of medical care. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A body has been found at a Winnipeg recycling depot. Police were called just before 8 this morning to the GFL Material Recovery Facility in St. Boniface Industrial Park. The body is believed to be that of an adult male, but police say the person has not yet been identified. The city suspended all recycling collection for the day, but it's expected to return to normal tomorrow. If your recycling day was today and it didn't get picked up, the city says that will happen Saturday this week instead. Some River Heights businesses are angry with the city's plans to relocate a bus stop in the area. They say the loss of parking will be a huge hit to their stores. CBC's Matt Humphrey has more.
Business owners in Grosvenor Square are worried about losing customers.
It's a one-stop shop. You can have your dinner, your bakery, your dry cleaning, your haircut. You can buy clothes, some furniture. So yeah, I think it's really going to change the neighborhood.
Chris Atkinson runs Lilac Bakery. He and his neighbors sent the city a letter about the new transit plan. The 4 bus stops at the corner of Grosvenor Avenue and Stafford Street will be replaced with 3 new stops at new locations. And one is going right in front of his bakery, taking the place of several parking spots.
I've talked to all the business owners in the neighborhood. Everyone uses these 5 spots. They turn over every 2 hours, if not faster than that. And we rely on it for business too.
Liz Hydesmith lives nearby and loves going to the Grosvenor shops.
I suppose because they're local, the people are nice. I feel like I also walk there and meet friends from the local areas.
The city says the parking spots will be replaced, but a little farther from the bakery. Cassandra Carrero runs the cafe cocktail bar Charcuterie. She signed Atkinson's letter.
That is the #1 complaint in this area, I would say, is finding parking. We get really busy, especially like weekends and in the evenings, and it is hard to find parking already. So taking away 5 or 6 spots, it sounds minuscule, but we've seen how much it impacts people wanting to come down to this area.
Carrero says even a few days without nearby parking can mean financial losses. She wishes the city had consulted them before the changes.
The city says when it was picking spots for new bus stops at Stafford and Grosvenor, it considered things like physical space. Is the street big enough for a city bus? Or connection to pedestrian infrastructure. Is there a sidewalk nearby? And also things like safety, both for the driver and for the pedestrian.
The transit changes take effect June 28th. Matt Humphrey, CBC News, Winnipeg.
All right, Riley Lechak back in now, and we're in for the first time tonight, not back to me. Really nice day outside today.
Yeah, another pleasant spring May day. Today I will also categorize as pretty unremarkable across the province. The only thing to mention is the air quality. We've had some air quality statements issued for the Interlake down into eastern Manitoba, which I'll get into a little bit later in the show because of the wildfires that are burning. Boy, oh boy, hard pressed to find some cloud cover across the province. A little bit of thin cloud in the southwest, a little bit in the north. That helped propel our temperatures up to 21 degrees in Winnipeg this afternoon. 20s back to the west, a very seasonal Thursday, really province-wide, even above seasonal into northern Manitoba. 20 in Thompson, 8 in Churchill this afternoon. We're looking at another single-digit night. Again, very seasonal for this time of the year. A few clouds out there, a light easterly wind overnight. That wind does start to shift around as we get into the day on Friday, and that's going to lead to some of those air quality issues across other parts of the province as we get into your Friday. 20 degrees tomorrow afternoon. We'll talk about the air quality and the weekend when I come back.
All right. Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
It's a hot button topic at City Hall, a plan to eliminate parking meters, as some city councillors say they're concerned. That story after the break. A progressive Conservative MLA has been stripped of some of his responsibilities. The penalty against Jeff Wharton comes one day after members of Heather Stephenson's former government were found guilty of ethical violations. Meanwhile, the Premier opened the door to a possible inquiry. The CBC's Ian Fraze has more.
I apologize today to the people of Manitoba for my conduct.
Jeff Wharton says he regrets trying to approve a silica sand mining project after his Progressive Conservatives lost the 2023 election. In a bombshell report by Ethics Commissioner Jeffrey Schnorr, Wharton was found guilty of violating the Conflict of Interest Act, along with two now former MLAs, former Premier Heather Stephenson and former Deputy Premier Cliff Cullen. The commissioner is recommending fines between $10,000 to $18,000. Since Wharton is the only one still in the PC caucus, Tory leader Obi Khan stripped Wharton from challenging the business minister in the legislature.
I have removed his critic role in light of this.
Schnorr interviewed 19 people and read hundreds of pages of documents, and yet he couldn't answer why would these MLAs try to push through a project when they knew outgoing governments are only supposed to handle routine matters before the next government is sworn in, nothing major like this.
You have a right to know. Why were they so intent on ignoring the results of the election?
Canoe brought up one text message as a possible clue. It said, "Did we get it done today?" Written by Silica board member David Filman to Cullen. Filman is well known in Tory circles and a friend of Stephenson. Cullen replied he wasn't aware the bureaucracy may object to approving the mine after the NDP's election. Makes me look bad, Cullen wrote. I feel sick. Speaking with reporters Thursday, Canoe demanded answers from the PCs. He compared what happened to the vote rigging scandal from 30 years ago.
There was an inquiry in the 1990s for something that didn't ultimately lead to the Premier.
The House must vote on the Commissioner's recommendations, including the fines. Canoe says that won't happen until October. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A plan to eliminate parking meters in Winnipeg has some city councillors concerned. They worry the move could negatively impact businesses and people without smartphones. CBC's Cameron McLean reports.
This is one of the only places you'll be able to pay with cash for parking in Winnipeg. The city is removing all of its parking meters and moving to an app-based system. But two downtown councillors say that could leave some people without a way to pay.
This council is so tone deaf.
Fort Rouge East Fort Garry councillor Sherry Rowland says although 80% of people pay through the app, a significant number of people still use other methods.
I really think before we put an obstacle of visiting the Exchange District or the downtown, that we should have had a conversation.
Mayor Scott Gillingham says the idea has been discussed since 2018, and Canada is phasing out the 3G networks which the meters rely on. People who want to use cash can still pick up prepaid booklets at the parking store, City Hall, and the Access St. Boniface location. Daniel McIntyre councillor Cindy Gilroy says the city needs to make the booklets more widely available.
There is no plan in trying to get those into stores to distribute so people would have easy access to them.
The councillors also worry the city could introduce dynamic pricing, charging customers more to park during busy times. While there are no immediate plans to move in that direction, Finance Chair Jeff Brawadi says it could help free up more parking.
Some future point, years down the road, as we move even more heavily into an app type setup, I think that would be an opportunity to potentially look at, changing hours, changing rates.
The prepaid parking booklets will be available July 2nd. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The city is working with the province to make sure eligible homeowners who didn't get their school tax credit receive it this year. This is the first year homeowners receive a credit of up to $1,500. The provincial NDP government introduced the changes last year, replacing a different system under the former Conservative government. But this week, some homeowners say they didn't get the tax credit on their annual bill. Manitoba's finance minister has said it's because they didn't register their home as their primary residence. The mayor says they are working on a solution.
We're now assisting the province as a city, working with the province to try to get that credit to the right, to the appropriate homeowners. So there's communication that's going out. There are other steps being taken.
A city bulletin says Manitoba is extending the time frame for eligible primary residence owners to self-declare. The notice says the city will continue to accept forms until November 15th. Now Riley's back in.
Yes.
Once we've seen you.
We only spend all day together.
I know, right? You can forgive me for that. You said to us this morning it's a really unremarkable forecast. We've seen that high, we've seen some of those lows, which is just spring in Manitoba.
Yeah, probably the most consistent and like you said, most unremarkable 7-day forecast I've done since I took over this role.
Which is not so bad.
Which is, not necessarily a bad thing. There is still a couple of things to talk about, most notably the air quality. Boy, oh boy, if you were in Gimli or Winnipeg Beach this morning or Victoria Beach, anywhere sort of east of that fire that's been burning in Nopaming Provincial Park, you probably were inundated with smoke this morning. The air quality advisory that was in place for that southern part of the Inner Lake has now been lifted, but the advisories have now been put in place for Steinbach down through Emerson because predominantly of this fire burning in Nopaming Provincial Park. Now at about 101,000 hectares, but there is still that border fire on the border of Manitoba and Ontario near Ingolf, Ontario, that is still burning out of control. Those are the only two in the province currently burning out of control, but this one is the one that's been putting out the most smoke throughout the day, mostly because of the easterly wind, which has been pushing that all across Lake Winnipeg. But as we see those winds shifting around, you can start to see the smoke plume from that fire being pushed down further to the southeast. I know when I was outside a little earlier in the afternoon, I did smell just a tinge of smoke in the air here in the downtown. Now, these colors are a little bit exaggerated just so you can better see the direction of this. But as we get into the day on Friday, winds do lighten up. They become a little bit more variable, but generally looking at a northeasterly flow, which is going to push all of this southwest. So I do think as we get through the day on Friday, we will see some periods of haze here in Winnipeg, but more notably down into the southeastern corner of the province as we get through the day. Those winds do lighten up. I know a couple of breezy moments today, but as we get into Friday, we'll start to see those winds backing off more like 10 gusting 20 throughout the day. So winds really not much of a factor as we get through the next 24 hours, even the next 48 hours, not looking at a lot of wind, really not a lot in the way of cloud cover either. A few passing clouds into the morning hours on Friday. Otherwise, smooth sailing, mostly sunny skies as high pressure dominates our pattern for the foreseeable future here. That's going to warm up our temperatures even pretty considerably as we get toward the middle of next week. You can even see into Sunday just a few clouds hanging around, mostly sunny skies and above seasonal temperatures as we get toward the weekend for much of the province. So waking up tomorrow morning, 9s and 10s throughout the Red River Valley already. Once the sun pops up, it really helps to elevate those temperatures. 8s back to the west, even an 8-degree temperature first thing in the morning for Thompson. We'll try for 20 tomorrow afternoon in Winnipeg, a couple of 22s on the board for Saturday and Sunday, Brittany. And as we get into early next week, you see those temperatures rising up to 26 degrees for Tuesday. It gets warmer in your 7-day forecast.
All right. Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, not a bad day to get out in the garden, and it looks like a good weekend to get out there too. We have more straight ahead. Stay with us. A Transcona Park will be renamed in honor of the family of a longtime Winnipeg police officer. Council approved the renaming this morning, but not without some controversy. Transcona Councillor Russ Wyatt brought forward a motion to rename Kildonan Meadows Park to Lucky Family Park. Joseph Lucky was a police officer for 30 years, starting in 1959. His daughter died when she was hit by a drunk driver.
Well, I'm a little jittery. It's quite an honor to be more or less selected to have a naming of a park.
3 councillors voted against the renaming, saying they were uncomfortable with nominations coming directly from council. The city has paused commemorative renamings while it reviews the mandate of the Welcoming Winnipeg Committee. Wyatt says he wanted it to happen now because of Lucky's age. He turns 91 in October. The Manitoba Museum has issued an apology today to First Nations, Inuit and Métis communities for housing the remains and belongings of their ancestors. The museum has held these ancestral items for several decades, but in 2022 it began the process of repatriation. The goal was to return all the remains to the communities. The apology was read by the CEO in a private ceremony today. She says every step they take is decided by kinship communities.
The way forward is being led by the kinship communities. So it is the work of the museum to prepare ourselves so that we can support the ancestors in their return home.
The museum expects this work to take several years. Students from across the province today are having their voices amplified, a showcase that is empowering them to recognize injustices and use their strengths to create change. It's all through a showcase at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. CBC's Felicia Adam has more.
From performances, displays, and drawings, students from 25 schools across Manitoba filled the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, not as visitors, but educators. It's the 5th annual Upstander Showcase.
These are very real issues that very real women go through.
14-year-old Zanovi Kapti is advocating for women's rights. Her shield is decorated with pink and purple ribbons representing women's health and domestic abuse.
I'm hoping that, people will learn something new, or, maybe they'll be inspired to step up and say something as well.
More than just a number, I'm spirit and light.
These students are making sure people remember the history of residential schools.
It shows how some of the kids felt in residential school and all the fear they had because they were separated from their families.
Graham Lowe's is behind the showcase, an idea that started in his classroom 10 years ago.
We want to empower students at any age to learn and to demonstrate their work, and they don't have to be accomplished or win a Nobel Peace Prize before they can start to do work for human rights.
Okay, so you guys wrote this book?
Yeah.
These grade 3 students are advocating for children's rights.
We took some rights from the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and each person had a partner and they chose a right, and we put it all together in a book.
Dakota Barker was happy to see young people speaking up.
But to see kids be so passionate about connection and about standing up for what's right and standing up for each other, coming together is, with the state of the world that we're in, it's really heartwarming.
Over 100 students from grade 3 to 12 took part, showing that no matter what age, anyone can stand up for human rights. Felicia Adam, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The man accused of killing 2 Israeli embassy staff in Washington has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Police say it happened as they were leaving an event at a Jewish museum Wednesday night. The CBC's Aaron Collins has more from the U.S. Capitol.
Witnesses say the shooting started here outside this museum just after 9. A lone gunman approaching 4 people before opening fire, leaving a young couple dead.
He reaches into his bag and pulls out a keffiyeh and says, "I did it. I did this for Gaza."
He said, "I did this." He said, "Sir, I'm unarmed."
The victims, both staffers at the Israeli embassy in Washington and reportedly just days from getting engaged.
You can't believe that your heart can break into more pieces, you know, after everything that happened to us in this year and a half. And then it can.
31-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago, Illinois, is now charged by complaint after his initial appearance before U.S. Magistrate Judge Matthew Sharbaugh.
Washington police say they quickly apprehended the alleged shooter outside the museum.
The suspect chanted, "Free, free Palestine," while in custody.
The FBI also on the case. Agents quickly deployed to search the accused's apartment in Chicago. The attack quickly condemned as an example of rising anti-Semitism around the world.
We're continuing to investigate and contact the subject's associates, his family members, and co-workers. We are also executing search warrants for his electronic devices, reviewing his social media accounts, and all of his internet postings.
These attacks come a week after Donald Trump toured the Middle East, the U.S. president securing the release of the last Israeli-American hostage in Gaza, but not visiting Israel during the trip. Today, the Trump administration quick to condemn the attack.
The hate has got to stop, and it has to stop now.
The killings come as Israel ramps up its military attacks in the Gaza Strip, an offensive condemned earlier this week by the UK, France, and Canada. In the wake of these killings, an Israeli official called out Canada's Prime Minister and the other leaders for their criticism of Israel, saying they were backing the hatred that fueled this attack. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Washington.
Now, the Washington shooting came in the middle of diplomatic tension involving Israel and Canada, and that tension echoed in Israeli comments today. The CBC's Ashley Burke reports.
Do you have any updates to share, Minister?
Canada's new Foreign Affairs Minister says she's appalled and horrified by the killing of 2 Israeli diplomats in Washington.
My thoughts are with their friends, their families, and the broader Jewish community, not only in the United States, but here in Canada. The rise in anti-Semitism is unacceptable, and it must stop.
The Prime Minister posting online, "This hate is intolerable, and I condemn it in the strongest terms." But ministers in Israel are suggesting Canada, the UK, and France are among those to blame after calling Israel to stop expanding its military operations in Gaza and allow in more aid or else face action.
There is a direct line connecting anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli incitement to this murder. This incitement is also done by leaders and officials of many countries.
This is an absolutely outrageous and obnoxious statement made by the Israeli Foreign Minister to blame some of the best friends that Israel has across the world.
Israel's Prime Minister went on camera next, personally calling out the 3 leaders, including Mark Carney.
With a threat of sanctions against Israel, not Hamas. These 3 leaders effectively said they want Hamas to remain in power.
He's also trying to scare other countries off from criticizing Israel. There is no way that that statement is supportive of Hamas.
This all unfolding a day after this. Canada says Israeli Defense Forces fired shots in the vicinity of a delegation in the occupied West Bank that included 4 diplomats with the Canadian embassy. A Canadian official says they were shaken up. Israel says they were visiting a refugee camp and entered an unauthorized area, so soldiers fired warning shots. Canada summoned Israel's ambassador over the incident. A Canadian official tells CBC News that that meeting in Ottawa happened yesterday afternoon and conveys the gravity of the situation. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Aid, including flour, has started reaching people in Gaza after Israel's 11-week blockade. But aid officials say it's not yet nearly enough to prevent famine. The CBC's Crystal Gamansing reports.
Some bakeries in southern Gaza, backed by the World Food Program, fired up their ovens, baking bread for the first time in weeks. Humanitarian aid, which Israel permitted to enter Gaza Monday, was collected by UN agencies and distributed late Wednesday.
The humanitarian situation in Gaza is in dire condition.
What we'll need to do is to continue to bring humanitarian aid, advocate for the crossings to be open, and make sure that the food goes to the ones mostly in need.
A UN-backed report from the IPC earlier this month said 1 in 5 people in Gaza faced starvation. Images of malnourished babies and children eating scraps pushed leaders, including those in the UK, Canada, and France, to demand Israel end its blockade on humanitarian supplies. The suffering being witnessed, says Israel's foreign minister, is because of Hamas.
Hamas started the war on October 7th, is solely responsible for the war's continuation, and is solely responsible for the suffering of Israelis and Palestinians alike.
The International Committee of the Red Cross said it got 1 truck of medical supplies through to replenish a field hospital in Rafah, but more is needed. So far, roughly 100 trucks have been allowed to enter Gaza. Several hundred entered each day during the ceasefire earlier this year. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Still ahead then and now, we take you to Nopaming Provincial Park, where wildfires, evacuations, and property loss today draw similarities to scenes that played out in the same area more than 40 years ago. We dig into the CBC archives when we come back. Stay with us. Over the past week, we've heard some incredible stories from the wildfires and seen some dramatic images. Campers needing to be rescued, mass evacuations, and properties lost to flames. But those same scenes played out more than 40 years ago in one of the same areas. It was the Labor Day long weekend in 1983 when lightning sparked several small fires that merged into a massive one in Nopaming Provincial Park, burning more than 25,000 hectares and sending more than 1,000 people fleeing. We reach back into the archives to bring you this story.
At 7 o'clock this morning, Ian Ripley was skimming over Nopaming Provincial Park in a high-speed helicopter. He and other conservation officers were looking for campers who might still be unaware that the park had been evacuated and they had to get out. They found them. Several groups of canoeists in the Elbow Lake area could see the smoke, but they did not realize how bad the situation was until they saw the helicopters arrive. Ripley told them what had happened. Lightning storms Friday night in the park had started many small fires. Yesterday, fanned by strong winds, 3 had grown to immense size and were now out of control. 1,000 people, many of them cottage owners, had already left, and now it was up to these people to get out too. The canoeists quickly packed and left.
We were pretty frightened. There was 2 fires on either side of us. The wind was blowing from the fire, so we were basically having the fire coming toward us.
But while people are now safe, cottages are not. This is the area everyone is the most concerned about. It's threatened by the largest of the 3 fires burning out of control. It's a new subdivision on Beresford Lake with 85 cottages. Late tonight, with firemen pulling out of the area because of darkness, the fire had crept to within 1 kilometer of this evacuated community, and it was slowly advancing. Firefighters say it will be a miracle if some of the buildings are not destroyed overnight. Earlier, we talked with Jim Parsons, who was one of the firefighters working the area.
See, I just look over there to my right. Down there, I can see a piece of fires breaking out over there.
Yeah.
What about that?
We have guys all along the line. Other guys that are on the line. We follow the fire line back from where the main firefighters are.
Right.
And we break the hose and we'll put a nozzle on there and we put these fires out along the line as they break out.
Right. What would cause that fire just to flare up like that? It simply wasn't put out well enough before?
Well, when we go in here, we're just in there to wet it down, make it under control. And we have men checking the line. If it breaks out, that's when we come back in.
How tough is it to actually put a fire like this, Jim? Because see, over there to your left, you can see it flaring up on one of the tree trunks there.
It's very tough to put it out because when we make a pass, we usually have to make 2 or 3 back passes after we have the main fire out. And we're steady on the line until we're sure that positive that it's going to be out.
270 firefighters are now working in the area. More men are on the way. They are also using 7 helicopters and 4 water bombers. Brent Lees is coordinating the park's firefighting out of Lac du Bonnet. He says the other 2 major fires burning out of control do not threaten any cottages. He's worried about Beresford.
If the weather conditions cooperate and improve, we will make headway on the fire. At this time, it's extremely difficult to say how long that will take.
If the weather doesn't improve, how bad can the situation get?
Well, possibly 2 of the fires would join up, which would take out a considerable area of Nopaming Park.
Late tonight, the wind had died down, which has slowed the advance of some of the fires. But what's desperately needed is rain, at least an inch, which will give the firefighters here the edge they need. Ross Rutherford, CBC News, Beresford Lake.
So unfortunate deja vu watching that, and I'm sure people in that area right now also would like to see some rain, and some substantial rain.
I don't have any of that.
No, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But we do know that they're doing well out there.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Still out of control, but fighting that fire.
Yeah, let's talk about the weekend forecast because we are looking at a sunny weekend ahead. Temperatures really jumping up again. That's really going to dry things out again. Good if you are itching to get into the garden. I know I have had many people asking me about gardening. So outdoor conditions, we get 5 blooms as we head into the weekend, into early next week. Particularly though, as we get into next week, yeah, you'll probably want to pull out the hose or the watering can, because things are really going to dry up again as we get into next week here, especially with those temperatures warming up, in some cases close to 30 degrees by the time we get to mid next week. All right, your dog walking forecast. Max, I don't think we'll be complaining about this weather at all. Thank you, Rob, for sending this picture in. I could use more pet pictures. As always, you can send those to talkback@cbc.ca. So by the time the sun pops up early in the morning, already at 10 degrees in Winnipeg by 8 a.m. Looking at a temperature again tomorrow around 20 degrees in the afternoon, a sunny sky, northeasterly winds staying light throughout the day, and even into the evening, looking at a pretty pleasant evening temperature-wise. Maybe a bit of haze as we get through the day through the Red River Valley tomorrow. Temperatures still hanging on at 20 degrees in Winnipeg this hour. Gimli's at 19, 20 in Brandon, looking at really temperatures sitting around 20 degrees through much of the province as we head into the evening here. 8 degrees in Churchill, very seasonal for this time of the year, really across much of the province. And that is the story that we get into the day on Friday as well. Temperatures slightly cooler than seasonal in the west again, 4s and 5s across the western edge of the province, 7s and 8s into the Red River Valley, and looking at 5 degrees in Kenora overnight. Mostly clear skies, a few clouds kind of bobbing in and out as we get through the night into the early morning hours. 7 in Flin Flon, 6 in Lynn Lake, looking at 1 in Gillam, and -1 in Shamattawa, with some easterly winds pulling some of that cooler air off of the Hudson Bay coast. Another cool one in Churchill tomorrow at 11 degrees. Otherwise, looking at about 20 degrees through much of the north tomorrow, mostly sunny skies, a little bit of cloud in and out throughout the day. So just be mindful that there'll be maybe a bit of cloud, not much of an issue though at all. 21s across the west tomorrow, 20 in Winnipeg through the afternoon tomorrow, and looking at temperatures 17 and 18 across northwestern Ontario. I'll have your 7-day forecast coming up in a bit.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, if you golf, you've probably had a set of steel or titanium clubs, maybe graphite. Clubs have advanced over the years, though, and are very different from the wooden ones used more than 100 years ago. A West St. Paul resident has made it his mission to breathe new life into those old clubs. He hit the green with CBC Manitoba community reporter Shanalee Vidal.
That's Kelly Leonard teeing off in historical fashion. For more than 20 years, he's been creating replicas of golf clubs from the 1600s to the 1920s. These old school clubs are handmade out of wood.
I just fell in love with these clubs, like the look, the shape, it was just gorgeous.
With a background as a golfer and a furniture maker, Leonard brings his two passions together. It all started when he just happened to see a photo of a hickory golf club and was awestruck.
Well, I forgot what I was doing, but I can remember what I did. I took a mental image of the club and I came out to the shop and I just started putting material together to build it. And I built my first club, which looked nothing like the club. At the time, I thought I nailed it, right? But no, I was so far off. It was hideous. But that spurred me on to do another one and another one. This is your shaft, primarily made from hickory. Prior to hickory, ash was used. Within the head, you have a few components. We need to bring the weight up because the wood is just not heavy enough. This is heavy, but it's not heavy enough. So what I have to do is I have to create a pocket or a cavity in the back of the club. And then I have to pour molten lead in it. And this lead has to be anchored so that it doesn't come out. We apply a ram's horn slip, which is the horn from a ram's horn. And that goes here, which is very hard. So this will protect the leading edge of the golf club. It's easy enough to do it by hand, but it takes time to understand everything that's going on, the grain direction in the head.
The game of modern golf with steel clubs and a dimpled ball has been around for 100 years. Originally, golf balls were stuffed with feathers and were not very durable. In the mid-1800s, the game changed with balls made out of hardened tree sap. They were mass-produced, making the sport affordable to many people.
Now in this one, it might be hard to see, but this one has a leather insert. It's very hard. It's harder than the wood. the clubs were taking a beating with the harder golf ball. So club makers were probably doing a couple of these every day. The key is when you make good contact with these clubs with just a nice, well-tempoed swing, the results are there.
Unlike modern golf clubs, there's no two Hickory golf clubs that play exactly the same. And Kelly Leonard says that learning curve is all part of the joy of the game. Shannon Lee Vidal, CBC News, West St. Paul.
Still ahead, why you want to grab a warm jacket for our daily lift, even if you won't need it for our long-range forecast. We're back after this.
Well, that time as we get toward the summer months to start thinking about the UV index again, if you have any outdoor plans or if you happen to be working outside. So for tomorrow, looking at a UV index of 6 or high in Winnipeg. That means particularly if you're outdoors, working outdoors around the midday when the sun's at its peak, you should be thinking about sunscreen and, of course, lots of water as well. Bright sunny day tomorrow, 20 degrees in Winnipeg, 22s for Saturday and Sunday, and things are going up from there. 24 for Monday, and then look at these temperatures as we head into the long range. Nothing but sunshine into next week. By late next week, temperatures up to 30 degrees by the time we hit Thursday. Well, gardening, of course, a sign of spring here in Manitoba, but in St. John's, that sign should be the first cruise ship of the season.
And in peak spring for Mother Nature didn't quite get the memo. Zach Gowdy has our daily lift.
Say hello to the Silver Dawn, the first cruise ship to dock in St. John's this season. The Silver Dawn is arriving from Nook, Greenland, on its way to stops in Halifax, Boston, and New York City. There are 660 passengers aboard. I'm not sure how many of them are going to want to get off the ship and poke around today. Do they tell them what the weather is like here in early May? Let's find out. This is your first time here?
Yeah, first time.
And what did you know about St. John's before today?
No idea.
Did they tell you what the weather would be like today, ma'am?
No, I just know this morning. Yeah, the weather is really cold.
We're supposed to be warming up. We came from Greenland.
What was it like in Greenland compared to this?
Not as cold.
Did they tell you what the weather is like this time of year?
Yes, they told me. I love cold weather, so that's okay.
What did they tell you about the weather before you arrived?
They didn't have to tell me. I check it because I usually look into Cruise Mapper and windy.com, so they didn't have to tell me. I knew in advance.
So it looks like you dress pretty good. You could pass for a local, I think.
Wow. Okay, I want to become one.
I like that. He did look like he could pass for a local.
Dress like a local, look like a local. Okay, you're local.
Exactly.
Cloudy and 4 degrees there today.
And very, very foggy.
Very foggy.
That's all for us here. Very different day here than it is in St. John tomorrow. We will see you back here tomorrow night.
Enjoy the sunshine.